In today's show, the Blazers make history, but like the bad kind. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you every single weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, we're going to talk about a historic night in Oklahoma City where the Blazers play one for the record books. Only the bad type of record books. The type of record books you want to burn and hide and not tell anyone about and turn off in the middle of the second quarter because the game was over. We'll talk about that game. We'll do our fastest recap in the West. When you lose by 62, you have to ask the biggest questions. Is Chauncey Billups the right coach for this team right now? I think it's pretty clear he's not the right coach for this team moving forward. But what has transpired over the last 10 days during this road trip has been very troubling, to the point where we got to ask the biggest questions. And then I want to close the show pondering what's next. They got a lot of games left. What do you do from here? They've only played 37 games. They're not at the halfway point of the season, and this thing looks cooked. Let's do what we do, though. Fastest recap in the West. The Portland Trailblazers were founded in 1970 when Harry Glickman was granted the rights to an expansion franchise in the far west outpost of Portland, Oregon. Within the first decade of the franchise, they won an NBA title in 1977. And even when that team dissipated very quickly after winning the Larry O'Brien Trophy, the Blazers went on to decades of success. From 1982 until 2003, they made 21 consecutive playoff appearances. They made 2 trips to the finals, and others back to the Western Conference Finals. They were one of the most consistent and competitive franchise, not just in the NBA, but across all of North American professional sports. They've made the playoffs 37 times in their 53 seasons coming into this year, their 54th. All told, they have played 4,317 games, including Thursday night, January 11th, 2024 in Oklahoma City. 4,316 of them have gone better than this one. The Blazers lose 139-77, trailed by 62 after 3 and lost by 62. This was a 12-point game. 12-point game. The end of the first quarter. The Blazers scored 24 points in the first quarter, 15 in the second, 17 in the third, and then 21 in a meaningless fourth quarter, down 62 after 3. The largest, according to StatHead, the largest margin after 3 quarters in NBA history. Historic night. This was tied for the 7th worst loss in NBA history and the 2nd worst loss in franchise history, as the Blazers are now the proud owners of the only team in the NBA history to lose multiple games by 60. The worst loss in NBA history happened in 2021 when the Grizzlies beat this Oklahoma City Thunder team by 73. Miami lost by 68 back in 1991. The Portland Trailblazers, in case you're curious, lost to the Indiana Pacers in 1998, 124-59, a 65-point loss. Golden State lost by 63 back in 1972. Also in 1991, the Kings lost by 62. The Knicks lost by 62 in 1960 to Syracuse. And Memphis Grizzlies in 2018 lost to Charlotte by 61, 140-79. The 7th worst loss in franchise history. The Blazers, through their 4,317 games, have a win percentage of 5-8. They've won more than half of their games during their 53 seasons. 54 now. that win percentage would put them either 6th or 7th best in NBA history, depending on how you count the Utah Jazz and New Orleans Pelicans, or in the New Orleans franchises sharing those records. They are one of the most successful teams in the history of the league, one of the most consistently competitive teams in the history of the league. If you are roughly my age, the Blazers have basically always been good. Heck, if you are a college student now, you are too young to remember the dark ages. And if you are old enough to have attended the championship parade, you've only experienced 16 seasons when they haven't made the playoffs. They've been really freaking good. And tonight's historic futility. That's your fastest recap in the West. 139.77. There's no reason to do the box score. I mean, we're not gonna do that. This is typically after games. If you're a new listener listening to this is your first episode. Typically after games, we do the box score. We run through the box score. We're not gonna do that. In some ways, this was built in for the Blazers to lose. 6 games, 6th game of a 7-game road swing. They're playing with a very, very young group. DeAndre Ayton did not play in this game. Malcolm Brogdon sat out this game for rest. D&D rest is what he's listed at in the box score. It's extremely funny. He needs to get the night off, so they lost by 60. But other than Jeremy Grant, Matisse Thybulle, and Anthony Simons, everyone else on the Blazers roster is a rookie or a second-year player. Rookies and sophomores. Incredibly young. If they had lost this game by 35, I probably would have just kept it moving. Like, I would not have batted an eye, honestly. They're a really young team in a rebuilding season in a really rough patch playing like crap right now. If they had lost by 30, cool. I probably would have just said, hey, this team isn't very good, and we would have talked about the game, and I would have talked about like how they got to use Toumani Camara off the ball, and Scoot Henderson's pairing with Anthony Simons has been a little bit rocky. Here's some ideas to make it better. I probably would have just done basketball stuff. This would have been a podcast about basketball. This was a built-in excuse for them to get throttled, right? I straight up would not have. You barely would have noticed a difference if they lost this game by under 40 points. Just would have kept it moving like we keep it moving all year long, 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts. 62 is a different beast. This was a different game. This isn't one of those. This is not a write-off game. This is not a game. They've had some stinkers recently, right? And there were some troubling games where it's just like, they don't look good. They've had 8 consecutive quarters when they failed to score 25 points. Like they scored 84 points against the Knicks, and it's like, man, that's not good. A friend of mine who's a Knicks fan texted me. He's like, are the Blazers really 35 points worse than the Knicks? Like they're in a bad space. Well, Pete, they're 62 points worse than the Thunder. They're in a really bad space. I bet you didn't watch this one. I don't think you can write this off as growing pains or crappy roster or bad shooting nights or any of the sort of obvious built-in excuses that if they had lost by a normal margin, we would have been able to write it off as. When you lose like this, you have to ask tough questions. Is the person coaching them cut out to coach them? The easiest thing to change when things go wrong is the coach. Can't fire the players. The players aren't very good, but you can't fire them. Let's talk about Chauncey Billups. It's time. It's time to have a conversation. Let's do that in the second segment. First, let's talk about Jace Medical. Listen, Jace Medical want you to feel comfort during uncertain times. That's their goal. They want you to make sure that during a life of uncertainty or things that would bring you anything that would bring you a peace of mind, they want to deliver that peace of mind right to your house. That's why they offer the Jace case. The Jace case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics that treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, skin infections, among other things. These things can come up. And if it would provide you peace of mind, if it would give you that comfort to have antibiotics on hand in your home, then Jace Medical can help. You can visit jacemedical.com. You will talk to a physician, and then that conversation will be reviewed by a board-certified physician. Then, once you're approved, your medications will be delivered to a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. Sign up. It's all online. Comes to your regular pharmacy. You can have it at your house to get the peace of mind that you might need. So if being prepared is important to you, go to jacemedical.com and use the offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. That's jacemedical.com, J-A-S-E medical.com to get $20 off your order when you use the offer code LOCKEDON. All right. Look, lose by 62. Something has to change. I have been... Let's rewind a little bit. I'm going to make some I statements here, but I want to rewind before I get into the I statements. Coming into the season, I had admittedly said I was pretty low opinion of Chauncey Billups as a coach, but I was willing to offer him the benefit of the doubt heading into this season as a prove-it year. First year, I thought he was really underachieved with a roster that should have been way better. Second year, they just stunk. I don't know. I don't know what the bail we were exactly shooting Chauncey was last year. But the roster wasn't very good. But they underachieved. Damian Lillard had one of the great offensive seasons in the history of the NBA, and they were under 500 with him in the lineup. Like, it's just, they're bad. And I admitted coming into the season that I had pretty low opinion of Chauncey Billups as a basketball coach. I will say, full disclosure, I really like him as an interview. He's incredibly helpful to the media. Like, he's a great storyteller. He's honest sometimes to a fault. Like, I enjoy him as a professional person. But like, I don't think he's a good basketball coach, and I did not think he was a good basketball coach coming into the season. And I've been very, very clear about that. I think some folks who want me to call for his job in his head have wanted me to go further, but I've been consistent, right? Is that I don't think he's been very good, and this season was going to be the year that he would prove it. And I even mentioned in that preview episode, you can go back and listen to it if you want to. I don't know why you would, but go check it out. It's in the season preview playlist on YouTube, or look for it like in the September episodes if you're an audio listener. The season's prove it season for Chauncey Billups is the title. And I mentioned in that very, very episode, in that preseason episode, that Billups could lose 60 games this year, and he could still have the best coaching season that he's had. Do the best coaching job that he's done in Portland, right? 22-60, and you could say, hey, this is working, right? Because I thought this team was going to stink. If you're a long-time listener and everydayer, shout out to my everydayers, like, you know that I thought this team was going to stink for always, basically. From prior to the season starting, I thought they were going to be one of the worst teams in the league, one of the 5 worst teams in the NBA. They're probably going to be like 5th or 6th worst team in the NBA. So better than I thought. But I think Billups has proved it. He can't coach this team to where they need to go. And if you were hoping for development, playing non-competitive games isn't valuable. Like I said, plenty of obvious reasons why the Blazers were going to get throttled in this game. OKC is really stinking good. They're one of the best teams in the league. They could certainly, I don't know if I would pick them to like make the finals or whatever, but like certainly they're going to be a home court advantage, might win the Western Conference in the regular season. Like, they're really stinking good. Top 10 in offense, top 10 in defense, 3rd best net rating in the league. Like, really, this is a really, really good team. Really, really good team. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander might win MVP. Blazers are playing super shorthanded and incredibly young. 62 is a different beast. 62 is a different beast. 62 isn't a sign of like, hey, you're a little bit overmatched. 62 is a sign that this thing is broken and lost. The wheels fell off, and then you lost the wheels on the side of the road, and then you drove another quarter mile, and now you are sitting there broken down with no idea what became of the things at the end of the axle. Oh, the wheels? Yeah, huh? We needed them. If you're an everydayer, you also know my kind of stance on coaching. I don't think that coaching is I think it's a smaller portion of the equation, right? Like, I don't think it's meaningless. Like, I think I've joked this, like, during the regular season, coaches don't do anything. And I do sort of think that, but I don't I think coaching is something like a third of the equation. The vast majority of what makes teams good is talent, right? Like, see Greg Popovich in San Antonio. I think that's a pretty good example, right? And you drop like one of the best coaches in the league. You drop Eric Spoelstra on this Blazers roster. Are they better? Sure. Is this a playoff team magically with a really good coach? Absolutely not. I think they're marginally better with a good coach. I don't think there's a lot of nuance with the Chauncey stuff. Like it bothers me that the conversation is not as straightforward as this. Has Chauncey Billups done a good job? Obviously not. Would they be better with a better coach? Yes. Is there value right now in firing him and getting marginally better for the second half of the season? Probably not. Would they be way better with a way better coach? No, they'd be better. Because coaching has an impact, but it's not going to change a team as young and as talent poor as the Blazers is not going to magically get good with a better coach. I still feel that way, but I think we here at this point of the season, it is pretty clear that Chauncey Billups ain't the dude. He is not the person to help them get better in the near term. He's not the person to help them get better in the medium term. And I never thought he was the long-term answer, and I really don't now. I am not going to sit here on this podcast and call for Chauncey Billups to be fired tomorrow morning or stopped from getting on the plane before they go to Minnesota. But the Blazers should think long and hard before they invite him back for next season. What value does he add to this roster? If he was supposed to be the coach that was to coach a good team with Damian Lillard, but that didn't work out and he wasn't very good at it, but maybe he'd be the coach to get through to young guys because he could coach them a little harder and they'd love to listen. Well, that hasn't really worked out either. Where are the Blazers drastically better? Or where do you see them sort of improving? When they're playing non-competitive minutes, when they're just getting punked off the floor and losing by 62. And coming into this game, they had been getting thrashed, except for a nice little comeback that they had against the Brooklyn Nets. But thrashed against Phoenix, thrashed 2 games against Dallas, thrashed by the Knicks. Like, they have just been straight up, they've been straight gutterballed. No chance is what I mean by that. A gutter ball. They're in the gutter watching the pins go by. A non-competitive toss. That's what they are. There is no reason Chauncey Billups should coach this team in the fall. There is no reason he should coach the team in the fall. I don't think there is much value in firing him mid-season. Like, what is Scott Brooks going to do that's really going to change the futures? And I don't think Chauncey Billups coaching this team terribly is going to poison them for some sort of long-term future. I just don't buy into that. But I think is abundantly clear. He's not the dude. He can't coach this team to where they need to go, and they have to make a change in the summertime. There is no reason he should coach this team in the fall. When I say they should ask themselves a question, it's a pretty simple question. Has the team taken the steps in the direction that you want them to go when they were supposedly competitive and when they were rebuilding? I think it's a pretty clear hell to the nah. I don't have that music drop, but if I did, I'd play it for you, for my longtime listeners. This was the game that pushed me over the waterfall. Like I said, I was a doubter in the fall, and I was waiting for Chauncey Billups to prove it. And I have my feelings on how much a coach can impact a roster that has talent deficiencies, right? But when you're like this at the midway point of the season, and it feels like the team is getting worse as they march forward, and even if they're not getting worse, like even if they're just kind of like in a really bad place. They're in a really bad place with more than half the season to go. And there isn't a thing you can point to say, this is a thing that they do well. This is a thing they do well. At the beginning of the year, they were competitive and playing defense. Since they've gone on this trip, really since, they had a nice win against the Kings the day after Christmas. And since then, what are the moments that you can, a nice game against Brooklyn where they played really well against a team with a losing record, but it's a nice win. But like when it has gone bad for them, they let go of the rope. And if you can't coach them up to be competitive, like try, right? If you can't coach them up to stay in the fight, even when you're undermanned, what's the point? What's the point? This was a prove it season for Chauncey Billups, and to me, he proved it. I don't need to see any more. I will though. I mean, like, again, I don't really see the value in firing him mid-season, but I am certain that it would be a mistake to bring him back in the fall because this team owes it to this group to give them another look and give them another voice and give them another direction because this one ain't working. I want to close the show asking a question I don't know the answer to. Where do they go from here? Let's talk about it to close the show. First, let me tell you about PrizePicks. Daily fantasy made easy. PrizePicks, pick between 2 and 6 players on your entry, and then it's just you versus the stat projections set by PrizePicks. You can play whatever sport you want. NHL during hockey season, the NFL as the playoffs run their course, or the NBA. I play the NBA because that's what I'm most comfortable with. So for me, the stat projections are things like points and assists and rebounds and blocks and steals. I would have got punked tonight if I had gotten in on PrizePicks prior to tip-off because if the Blazers were less on everything because they scored 77 points in an NBA game in the year 2024. But maybe you want to fade the Blazers. You want to be a hater. Well, go to PrizePicks where you don't play against the field. You don't play against Sharks. It's just you versus those projections. They set them. You go more or less. Hit less. Win some money. Hate on the Blazers because they're scuffling. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNBA, Locked on NBA, and use the code LockedOnNBA to get a deposit match up to $100 on your first deposit. They're match you dollar for dollar up to $100 on your first deposit. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use that promo code LockedOnNBA. It's PrizePicks. Daily fantasy made easy. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. I don't know the answer to this question. Where do they go from here? The very, very, very literal answer to this question is Minneapolis, Minnesota. Yeah, downtown Minneapolis, where they will play the Timberwolves. You know, the other extremely good team in the Western Conference. Just coming off an overtime loss to the Boston Celtics where they didn't have Rudy Gobert. I don't think the Blazers are going to win. Let me be super clear on that one. They don't seem like in a bounce back space. Also, Shaedon Sharpe left this game with an abductor strain, the game against OKC with an abductor strain, adding injury to insults. It's the groin strain he's been dealing with and kept him out of some games a couple of weeks ago. It flared up again. Whether they were just being cautious because they were down by 2,000 points or it was something that'll hold him out remains to be seen. We probably won't get an injury update until just before tip-off, but I would be, it seems very reasonable that he would not play. Second night of a back-to-back, groin injury, soft tissue stuff, like hold him out. I don't think Blazers going to win. And I certainly wouldn't judge them for a normal beatdown against a very good team on the road. Second night of a back-to-back, seventh game of a 7-game road trip, 2 weeks on the road. This was a loss the moment the schedule came out. In fact, if you go listen to the schedule release show, it's a good thing about doing a daily podcast. I can make some self-referential here, citing myself. Yeah, like I circled this on the schedule show, the schedule release show, saying like this is a loss. This is a loss. This would be a loss if the Blazers were good. This is a loss. Like this is just a brutal stretch. Really long time away from home. Long night of travel after getting smoked by 62. At least I'll have Malcolm Brogdon back though. Sat out Thursday night for rest. He's back Friday, baby, against the T-Wolves. So I don't like. So that's literally where they're going. I don't know where they go from here. There aren't a lot of easy answers. You know, maybe you really prioritize getting the ball in Anfernee Simon's hands more and getting Scoot off the court when he's on the courts and saying like, and you can just run the whole show and then we're going to have Scoot run the other show. But it's like, is that valuable for the future of the franchise? If Scoot and Ant can't play together because they're both ball dominant, like, isn't that something that you need to know? And it's like, that's a decision you have to make. Even just like the tactical stuff, tapping into it more than that. It's like, I don't know. It's like you get Toumani Camara, you stop using him as a spacer because it's just like he's passing up jump shots and hurting the offense. But like, they barely combined for 150 in the last 2 games. I'm not really worried about that right now. They got bigger problems than, Toumani Camara not quite being an NBA level rotation player because he's a negative on offense. He's a really fun defensive player on a team that's going to be bad. Like, let him play. Let him go. I think the real question is for the players. It's not for Billups or any I'm probably not going to talk about Billups for a few weeks. Like for me, this is on the guys. This is on the Portland Trailblazers. This is on the players. Do they have pride? Will they play with some pride? They might lose by 25. But down 62 after 3 quarters is a lack of pride. You have to take pride in this because the season is forever. And if you quit now, like if it certainly reflects poorly on the coach and the organization, everything like that, but like players play. That's really what I feel like. That's why I think they're 2/3 of the equation. Players play. I think actually, I'll recommend this. The Dunker Spot, Steve Jones and Nekias Duncan's a really good basketball podcast, talked about sort of what coaches do and kind of, it's like they can talk to players about timing and what kind of when to cut and when to make plays. But like sometimes the guys just, the clock isn't, players make the decisions out on the court. And because of the kind of freelancing nature of modern NBA basketball, sometimes it just goes haywire and you don't have so much of an impact. And I think that's sort of a lot of my philosophy is from there. And like Steve is a good NBA assistant coach. He knows. A lot of my beliefs are similar to that. Players play. And that's why I think the real test for me is, do they play with heart? Do they play with heart? Do they play hard? Does this team look like a team that wants to be around? Looks like a team that wants to be competitive. Looks like a team that wants to, to lose by 18, 19, 22 to when they're really overmatched as opposed to 62. I think that'll tell you a lot about kind of the core of this team. Because if they come out and lose by 40 again, come out and down 35 at halftime, it really doesn't feel like there's much point to the rest of the season. You might as well hit fast forward. If they've quit on you, and this is a really rough spot in the season, and everyone goes through rough spots, but this is more troubling than a rough spot. I think a real question is how bad do they look against the Timberwolves? Is their spirit defeated? Because if it is a larger conversation about value of developmental minutes. Because if their spirit is defeated and they're non-competitive, and this is like a stretch where it's like, oh, there's 45 games of this left, or whatever it is, 43 games of this left. It's like, then maybe you do think about making bigger structural changes. Because there's too many games left to bail now. Too many games left to bail now. I've never seen a team more desperate to make a trade to get worse. They really do. They need to trade some of their vets and just like really buy into getting worse. I think they'll play harder with younger players more consistently. I think right now they just need a shake up. They just need a shake up. They need anything to change. Anything to change. I'll say this. If they were to fire Chauncey Billups, I don't think there's a lot of value in it, but it wouldn't be the worst thing that they did. I don't think they will. And I don't think it would be I don't think it would be some horrible mistake. I wouldn't condemn them for it. I just think there's like marginal value in it. They need to change, though. Something's got to change. Because where do they go from here? Even after those 6 minutes, I don't know. Guess what? I'm not going anywhere. I'll be back next week. 5 shows, Monday through Friday, wherever you get podcasts. If you're in Portland and it snows this weekend, go have fun in the snow. Hopefully you stay warm and all that. Get some snacks. Keep your family close. Hopefully you keep electricity and enjoy yourselves if we have a major weather event. And if it doesn't snow at all, make fun of people who forecast the weather because it's a hard job. All right. How about we do this again next week? Tell your friends about the program. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.